Go ahead.
And this is actually more of my annual exercise in tilting and windmills. But the best way we could avoid the summer slide would be to move from the 19th century agrarian model of not having school in summer to align ourselves with the rest of the industrialized world and actually have classes throughout the summer. Sooner or later, somebody has to make movement in this. Why not us? Why not? I'm serious. You know,
I know that.
It is really ridiculous, and it's actually hurting our kids. And there is, unless somebody convince me otherwise, I don't think there's any convincing reasons as to why we continue to follow this model, other than that's just the way we've always done it. So much for tilting of windmills yet again.
Okay, next we're going to come to public comment. And given that...
Can I make a comment first? Before we go to public comment? Yeah, I'd like to make a comment reference to what happened during public comment last meeting. I want to make sure that everybody in the room understands that nobody's right to free speech was impinged upon last month. The right to free speech is not absolute. There are restrictions to free speech. You are not allowed to disrupt a court in session. If you do, the judge will find you in contempt of court and can throw you in jail. You are not allowed to disrupt or state your mind in a session of the legislature. If you violate that, the Sergeant of Arms will be asked to escort you outside. This meeting, as is clearly stated in the agenda and is stated by the chair of the school board prior to public comment, this is a working meeting of the school board. We invite the public to observe us, to observe the meeting, and we also take public comment. But that is what it is limited to. We listen to what the public has to say. It is not an open forum for argument, for question and answer, or anything like that. Those are the rules. If you violate the rules, you'll be asked to leave. If you don't leave when you are asked to leave nicely, you can be arrested. That is actually an excellent example of civics. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Wow.
I just want to make that clear.
Okay. I'm going to ask, given the number of people here this evening, a show of hands as to how many individuals are planning on speaking. Could you please raise your hand? So we only have one individual that's going to speak this evening? Two?
You just spoke, why don't you?
Three? Anyone else? Four? And I need to make sure you're all Guilford residents. Are all four of you Guilford residents?
No.
I know you are, Steve. And you are. Okay, so this is an opportunity for public comment. We ask you state your name and your address. The agenda item is intended to give citizens, and this would be Guilford citizens, a voice so that the Guilford School District has an opportunity to hear your comments directly. This time is not intended for question and answers. Questions about specific programs or practices, we ask that you direct it to the respective building administrator during school hours. With that, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
My name is Skip Murphy, 9 Guilford Glen Road. And I have to thank Kurt Weber for giving me the perfect opening, because before coming here, it was rather vague. That, you folks displayed such a wonderful object lesson in civics. And especially now, from a seat of authority, pointing the bony finger at a father who only and merely wanted to get some kind of respect for his views, and you totally ignored him. I will tell you that in your process of trying to ignore the public, because some of you may not even wish to be listening to me, you've made yourselves the object of ridicule in the blogosphere and internet. Millions of people have watched those videos, and what they was another civics lesson. A board of elected officials who have decided that they were not going to be accountable in public to the people that pay the taxes for this school system. Elected officials are supposed to be accountable, and not just in private office meetings. But this should be the forum, and I know and speak from experience on the Guilford Budget Committee, we always took comment. And when asked questions, we tried to respond as much as possible. Your silence spoke far more than what your words ever could have. And frankly, I find it rather amusing that you would now point to that father and try to make an object lesson of him. You know, I've listened to you folks for 8 to 12 years, and what happened last month, even though I could not be here, I was not surprised at all. Because the lesson was not that Billy Bear was arrested simply for trying to get answers from an elected board of representatives, but that board remained silent and refused to engage because he felt that the morality that he was trying to bring his kids up was one that was important to him, but not important to you. I've seen the meme over and over again, both here in New Hampshire and across the nation, that it seems that local boards, teachers, staff, folks as yourself, seem to have a rather condescending attitude towards parents. That while on one hand you say, we need engaged parents, but then when they become engaged but have an opposite point of view, we must deal with those people appropriately. I've heard it, I've blogged it, I have the video of it. And I have to say thank you very much for once again showing that attitude to the extreme. You've become a laughingstock. Thank you.
Anyone else? Joe?
Joe Wernick, Gary Circle in Guilford. I want to commend the board and Kent for nominating and for the Daniels for the Champions for Children, because the Guilford Youth Center, along with Scott, along with our library, which were both donations to the town, have been incredible assets to not only the town but the school district. What wasn't mentioned earlier were the schools, indoor track team, field hockey, volleyball, Parks and Rec uses it. It's just incredible the amount of support that the kids can get now after schools between the library and going to the youth center. And as a resident of this town for 26 years, it happens not like you would know, and having kids in the district for 20 years, I can say I am very pleased. I know 4 years ago I was at odds with the district and violating the 2-minute rule and but I felt strongly about my issues that I had. But I feel that the district has done an incredible job. I have a daughter that just graduated college, one that's graduating high school, a son that's going into the high school. And this is a good example. All the students that you see in here tonight are honor roll students. They're in athletics, they're in drama, they're in student council, they're in the honor society. They'll be presenting tomorrow night over at the Meeting House, which I highly encourage people to go to, because that is a great example of what this district represents. And I was very impressed with all the comments and letters I've received in the paper from students and parents of students from Guilford. And that is my biggest concern. I want to know what the parents of students in Guilford feel. And I think that the majority of them feel that you are doing a good job. And I want to commend you for that, because I know my students have done well, my kids have done well, and other students like these kids here tonight are going to continue to do well. And I thank you, Marsha, for your efforts at the middle school, and you will be missed. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Skip, I'll let you have one more turn.
I want to address something else that I forgot earlier about what Kurt said, that he wanted to go past the agrarian model of public education. I agree with that. I also want to see the school systems go past the progressive factory model of education as well, which is one thing that we see here. I would want to challenge this board to open themselves up to the meme that no longer says every child deserves a public education, but rather every child deserves a publicly funded education, where a government school like this, a public school, is only one choice that a parent can make for their own child. That in addition, they could also choose a charter school. They could also go to a private school. They could also go to an online school, and they could be homeschooled. But yet the tax money that the parents are paying to educate their children would follow the child and not follow a building or a zip code. I really think that that's the model that you folks should be following and enter into that competitive arena. Because right now you're so isolated, we see things that don't go right. And while Joe Wernick had a couple of examples, I'll close with one from my own family. My youngest was a first grade student here. He was special ed. At the end of the first grade, I was told he will never be able to read by his first grade teacher. We immediately yanked him out and brought him to a private school. There, the teacher that was going to be his for the second and third grade took him under her wing because she had the ability to do so and the willingness to do so. And by the end of the third grade, he was reading at a fifth grade level. If he had stayed here in Guilford, he would have never, ever been able to read like that. He would have instead been socially passed along from grade to grade and become a failure. So again, I'm going to ask you again, it isn't the teachers or the staff or the board that should be in charge of the kids' education. It should be the parents, because they may not have the educational background, but they have the love and interest of that child to know what is best for that child, and not the attitude of an educational industrial complex, which it has become, because we spend more on education than almost anything else in this country. And we have the results to show for it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else with public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment for this portion. There is one later in the meeting. So now our policy review. Great. New business, we have some policies for first reading. Ken?
We have 4 policies for first reading tonight, and this is following the request of the board last month for us to look at our policies regarding to instructional materials. So you have 4 policies tonight for first read. They're all available on the website, both under our proposed policy list on the main page. So the 4 are IGE, parental objection to specific course material, IJ, instructional materials, IJE, media center materials, and KEC, reconsideration of instructional materials. So we've consulted with a number of sources. We'll just take them one at a time for first read. IGE refers to parental objection to specific course material, and it speaks to a parent's process to request of the principal something that they would like to see a change or not have their student participate in. I suppose probably a good idea to read that one for us tonight. The board recognizes there may be specific course materials which some parents and guardians find objectionable. In the event a parent guardian finds specific course material objectionable, he or she will notify the building principal in writing of the specific material which they object and request that the student receive alternative course material. The alternative must be sufficient to enable a child to meet minimum standards for education in a particular subject area be agreed on to by the parent guardian or the building principal would designate. The parent guardian shall not require to provide a reason for objecting to materials. Any cost associated with the alternative course materials shall be borne by the parent guardian. Nothing in this policy should be construed as giving parents guardian the right to appeal to the school board. This policy is, as it's been on our books for some time, it follows the recommended policies of the State School Boards Association. It's come into play on a number of occasions, but we have never, to my knowledge, had any charges to parents for the alternate materials. That's something that we've never chosen to exercise. So we've done some research on this, and we'd like to recommend for first reading this policy remain as it stands. Second policy on IJ is on instructional materials and the responsibility of the board in approving and providing instructional materials in the district. I'm not going to read through all of this one, it's a bit longer. Basically, it talks about the criteria that we should use for instructional materials in the school. This one also is based on current administrative rules, and after looking at it, we're recommending no changes to policy IJ. IJA is a little bit longer. It's the Media Center Materials Policy. This one we are recommending a number of small changes to. It's a 7-page policy here, which was developed along with the American Library Association. And we've gone over it with Sally Sessler and a number of other sources. And there are a couple of places in here that you'll see changes in our recommendations for questioning materials in the library and the school collection. So we are going to recommend those changes to you for first reading. One of the things that this policy speaks to is the establishment of a book review committee that involves staff members, school board members, and parents. And talking with our two media directors, Sally Sessler and Ian Newt here, in their memory, that goes back about 20 years, there's been only one time that they've had to convene this committee for instructional materials. So we were glad to see that policy's in place. We've got a couple of small edits to that for first read, but that also addresses that area. Area that's more significantly impacted is KEC. And at the reconsideration of instructional materials, the first one, JEC, is for a particular parent to make an individual request regarding a student. KEC speaks to anyone in the community who has a question about instructional materials. So that doesn't have to come from a parent, that can come from any member of the community. The policy speaks to that citizen submitting a request for reconsideration of materials form to the school office for the principal of the building it's impacted. And upon receipt of the completed form, the principal and the building involved will convene a committee of 5 to consider the complaint. This committee shall consist of the curriculum director, a principal, media director, a teacher, and parent representative. So we chose after review to include a parent on that review committee and use the same structure of that that's in the previous committee for the media materials to have consistency there. So that's a change that we're recommending to the board tonight, and that we'll take questions on as you see fit.
Okay, so what you're telling me is we're still dealing with the same company.
Yes,
that
we are.
notified us at the last minute that they were no longer support their own software.
But the alternative would be change the whole company and the whole hardware to match that. So really, the decision when we did the building project 11 years ago was to choose the vendor because they have proprietary system. Now, up until this point, we had a very good relationship with them. This was a disappointment.
Anyone else?
The other, I just want to make more of an observation that even your option 2 really only covers hardware. It doesn't really cover the software. So if you have a software bug,
That is correct.
the one on the shelf has the same bug as the one on the production has to.
That is correct.
But we were at least trying to cover if
Yeah,
something.
no. I just want to
Something
make sure
breaks
everyone
down.
recognize that there's still a risk there even with that.
Realize the sensitivities of this coming after the budgetary process.
Okay.
So let me clear, so this expenditure would be included in next year's budget if we didn't approve it tonight, because it's a necessary.
That's correct. And
Just wanna make
that's
sure.
and that's
Yes.
why we put the 10,000 in to hopefully get us through next year so it could become part of the budgetary process. But points well taken.
But then we would pay $10,000 to get us through this year, and then another $65,000 or maybe more if the price goes up next year.
That's correct.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Motion? Which option do you want?
Which option?
Just verify based on option, Jack.
Yeah, based on option 1, which is the
Want to make a motion for option 1?
I'll
We have a motion and a second for option 1. Is there any other discussion?
Does this involve Gilbert voting on this?
It's affecting the high school too, so I would say yes, please join us.
Have we voiced our displeasure with the company?
Yes.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approval of option 1 for a price tag of $65,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion. Okay, we're going to come to our second public comment, and again, we still have a large number of people here, so a show of hands as to how many people, Guilford residents that are planning on speaking, please. So we only have 2 individuals that are planning on speaking. Okay, I'll open up the floor, and I am going to, again, just state for anyone that's new that has walked in since we opened up the initial public comment, we ask that you state your name and address. This agenda item is given to an opportunity for Guilford residents to have a voice and for the Guilford School District to hear what you have to say. It's not intended as a question and answer period. Questions about our practices or specific programs, we ask that you direct directly to the administrator during business school hours. And who would like to start? Joe?
Joe Wernick, 3 Gary Circle. I want to commend Kurt for bringing up the topic earlier, and I want to go on record that I agree with Skip on something. As far as the year-round schooling, as an educator and as a parent, I am all for it, and I wish there was some way we could get society to get into it. I know that is a hard thing to do, but I commend you for doing that once a year, and there we go, Skip. We agree on something.
Gosh, the first time in what, 6 years?
Yeah.
Skip, did you want to speak?
Yeah, a couple of things. It was mentioned since the last public input that there was going to be a committee for looking at the different materials, curriculum materials here in the district. I would like to immediately nominate Billy Bear to be on that committee if it would so please the board. I also have I have a hard time with what was said about the server. Being the former vice chair of the budget committee here in Guilford, there was a lot of acrimony built up when excess funds from the school district were spent outside of the budget process, especially for things that had already been approved for the next year. And just saying, well, we had to do it now versus later, just didn't make it. I understand you have the excess funds, but $65,000 for a new server and software is a bit much, and I think you're doing a disservice to the taxpayers of us here in Guilford by not going through that process. Now, sometimes I don't always get things right, so I'm going to ask a point of clarification versus a question. But you heard about this on January 1, correct? About the change with the vendor? That still would have been in time to be brought up during the deliberative session, and the budget could have been amended at that time. And instead, you've now waited until now to just pop that into the equation. And I think that's a wrong thing to do it, and I'm basically trying to voice my disgust at trying to unravel the legislative process here in Guilford. Another point of clarification, this one's to you, Ken. You said that the policy for a parent who is unhappy with the material would be to go to the principal of that particular school, but that doesn't have the right of appeal to the full school board. Did I hear that correctly?
That's what's stated in the policy, yes, sir.
Outstanding. You proved my point from the first public comment session that here you are, you're supposed to be an accountable board to the taxpayers, to the parents, and you've immediately cut them off at the pass right off the bat. I mean, you showed that last meeting, you just showed it again. This, it's just, I just love this. I may start coming to more of these meetings because I keep seeing this. Just tonight, you're providing great civics lessons to those who are looking for good governance, open and transparent. And here you are putting yourselves up on a chair and a stage saying, we will talk down to you. You're not important, that we cannot go to our elected representatives. That is wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. And thank you all for attending this evening. I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public session.
Crop TV.